Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining today's live video AMA. My name is Maggie. I'm the head of marketing at Crypto.com, and I'll be your host for today's live stream. Joining us today is Michael Burgess, the COO of Ren. Ren is an open protocol built to provide interoperability and liquidity between different blockchain platforms. So what they have set out to do is to aim at removing the hurdles involved in different liquidity between different blockchains and help accelerate the development of DeFi. We recently have listed REN Token on our exchange. We have also enabled the deposit and withdrawals of REN Token on our Crypto.com app. So today, I think is a good opportunity for Michael to be responding to some of the questions submitted by our communities earlier this week. And again, like our usual practice, if your question has been selected for today's, That means you may have won a share of the prize pool, which will be paid out in REN token, and the prize will be distributed directly to your crypto.com app account. So, Michael, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Maggie. And a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, before we start off addressing and tackling all of the questions, do you want to give us a quick introduction about yourself and also Ren?
Yeah, of course. So, Michael Burgess, I oversee operations here at REN. I've been with the organization since early 2018, since we did our fundraising round, and yeah, it's been a crazy few years. We've been building ever since, and yeah, we just released our RenVM mainnet back in May 2020. Been an exciting summer. We've seen great success with RenVM, and kind of speaks to the rise of DeFi and bringing Bitcoin on Ethereum. So yeah, it's been a great ride, and thanks for having me again. So looking forward to diving into these questions.
First of all, congratulations on the launch of the mainnet.
Thank you.
Definitely want to learn more about that. But before, and let's start with some more like of the fundamental of like better understanding the REN platform. So let's start with talking about your token.
hmm
Uh, how does REN work? And tell us a little bit more about the token economics.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, REN, REN is our token. It's an ERC20, and essentially it is used as a bond in our network to run a node, and the nodes power RenVM essentially. So you need 100,000 REN specifically, and then that gives you permission to actually go and physically run a node via a VPS, in fact. And then by virtue of running a node, you're participating in the network and earning a share of the fees that run through RenVM. So a great way to think about it is every time an asset moves through RenVM, kind of our bridge, right? There's a small fee that's extracted through that, and then that's distributed evenly throughout all nodes in the network. So by virtue of providing the service to the network, you indeed are rewarded as a user. So that's really the main purpose of the token. I mean, we potentially see it utilized in governance in the future, but for right now, it's simply used as a bond to run a node in the network. So that's it.
Great. So because the main net has been launched for like a few months now, like how has it been growing, and then where do you see the the growth potential of REN token
hmm
being a like primary role as the fees sharing when rewarding utility on your platform and on your blockchain itself. So how's the growth potentials like in say like the next 3 years or so?
Yep. So since we've launched, we've done, I think, $1.4 billion in volume. And that's really been a result of bringing Bitcoin to DeFi and more specifically Ethereum, right? And so essentially, RenVM allows the Bitcoin to be turned into an ERC20, and then it can be used within the Ethereum DeFi ecosystem as you'd like. You can go and I think really the easiest way to think about it is you essentially we're bringing more utility to Bitcoin, right? So previously, Bitcoin just kind of sat on its native chain. It didn't do a whole lot. It went up and down in price, but you couldn't really do much with it. So what we've done is provided utility for that Bitcoin. You can now go lend it in a lending protocol, or you can trade it on a DEX, for example, or provide liquidity as a liquidity provider and earn fees through an AMM exchange. So essentially, RenVM brings utility to kind of all of these assets that haven't been utilized in the past, right? And that's what we've seen, a huge driver of growth. And by virtue, the RenVM network is growing as well. So we plan on kind of mimicking this strategy throughout all the various layer one blockchains in the space, right? So Ethereum's first and foremost. That's really where all the activity is. And we're starting to add new blockchains. So we just added support for Binance blockchain or Binance Smart Chain, for example, and Polkadot and Avalanche are others coming down the pipeline, right? So that really kind of, with regards to growth, essentially we are trying to connect all of these various blockchains. And if the theory proves correct, then RenVM will grow as the entire ecosystem does as well, right? And for the token holders and those who run nodes, you'd expect them to take a share of that growth as well. So as the volume of RenVM increases, therefore the fees increase for the nodes, and essentially the rewards that individuals receive, subsequently increase as well. So that's the plan, basically.
So you were saying 1.4 billion since the
Correct. Yeah.
yeah. So
And I think for nodes, let me bring this.
imagine the volume we're talking about in 3 years' time, right?
Yeah, I think up to date, I think nodes overall have earned somewhere around 1.6 million, and that's been distributed to around 1,500 nodes. But I think that's the most up to date statistic, but I can check real quick. But yeah, so it's
That's
very
very
very fruitful. I think it's been very fruitful for the DeFi ecosystem because now they have more liquidity. They have all that Bitcoin liquidity that was kind of sitting on the sidelines. So now DeFi and Ethereum have grown as a result. Our network has grown as a result, and then of course those who are participating and running nodes have taken a share of that growth. So yeah, I'll leave it at that.
All right. So let's switch to talk a little bit more about the project of REN as a whole.
Mhm.
Major milestone rolling out the mainnet. What are the other key major milestone or accomplishments that you guys have achieved so far this year that you would like to highlight to our community today?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I mean, first and foremost, our mainnet, that was a big achievement. 2 years in the working, and it's really just our very first kind of phase of mainnet. So this is just its kind of MVP, if you will, and it's been successful, which we're happy with. But there's many more kind of stages to come, and it's really through. I think the easiest way to think about it is kind of starting off in a more centralized fashion, where we kind of have control of the network and can like tweak things if something goes wrong. And this is very much kind of like an evolution phase, a testing phase for us, and we can assess the economics and make sure the fees that the Darknode or the nodes that are earning are correct, and then they incentivize people correctly and all this stuff. And then our next phase is really kind of expanding the network in a way that it incorporates more nodes and becomes further decentralized, right? And then the final phase is like completely opening it up to all nodes, and then it's fully decentralized. And at that point, it's a mature ecosystem and a mature protocol, in fact. So we've just kind of begun the journey, really. And I think kind of an interim milestone, if you will, is the addition of all these new assets and destination chains. And I'll just clarify really quickly. So there's source and destination chains. Source chains are like Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, Zcash. These are the assets we're bringing to layer ones, right? And then destination chains are like Ethereum, Polkadot, Binance Smart Chain, Avalanche, all that stuff, right? So we've added, Binance Smart Chain as a new destination chain. And then as for source chains, we've added, we started off with Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, Zcash, but now we've added Filecoin, Luna, Dogecoin, in fact, Digibyte, and I think one or two others. So this is kind of our first cohort, if you will, of new assets that have been added to the protocol, and that will continue to expand as we grow as well. So the end goal, and sorry, I didn't actually answer your last question, our kind of goal for the next 3 years, our end goal is really to connect all of the relevant blockchains together, right? So you can think of us as building the highways in between the various cities out there in the world, right? So we just built our first highway from New York to Boston, and really we want to kind of connect all of them throughout the world, right? So that's our longer term vision, and it'll be, we're building really like an infrastructure layer. It's a core protocol. So it's a slow process. There has to be lots of testing. We have to make sure everything's secure and all that good stuff. But that really will be our journey over the next 3 years. So I'll touch. Yeah, I think that touched on the 3-year question. And then as for the major milestones, really so far, first version of mainnet, and then our first cohort of new assets that we've added to the protocol, and there'll be many more over the coming years. So we're excited.
So I mean, enabling interoperability between blockchains has been such a hot topic because of the DeFi boom. The projects that we have talked to, they all have a slightly different approach to.
Mm-hmm.
So tell us a little bit more about like how the RenVM work and how essentially your approach may be different from the others,
Mm-hmm.
trying to tackle the same issue.
Yeah, so interoperability is kind of like a loose term. There's many variants of interoperability, I'd say. Ours is very specific, and you can, I guess the easiest way to think about it is we essentially custodial assets as they move between blockchains, right? So we'll take Bitcoin, we'll store it in the RenVM network, and then mint a one-for-one representation on Ethereum. And then that one-for-one representation can be then moved to Polkadot or another layer one, right? And then RenVM will release that kind of that core asset when someone wants to move their ERC20 back to real Bitcoin. But the important point here, I think, is there are two big differentiators. Is first and foremost, it's fluid. So as soon as you send Bitcoin in, an ERC20 representation is minted. So it's a very kind of fluid back and forth. So just imagine this happening hundreds of times, per second, right, on all the different blockchains, right? So that's an important piece to keep in mind. And then second of all, it's composable. So you can kind of bake RenVM in and its functionality into user-facing applications. So a great example is Curve Finance, for example. Curve Finance. So they have essentially integrated RenVM through an SDK we call RenJS, and that allows their users to deposit and withdraw, native assets, though it's an Ethereum-based application. So essentially, users just send in real Bitcoin to a Bitcoin address. It waits the appropriate confirmations, and then out the other side pops, REN BTC, which is an ERC20 variant. And that is all done within an Ethereum-based application, right? Though they've integrated RenVM. So the composability piece, I think, is really kind of where we shine. And you can do a lot of things. So you can embed kind of intent into the Bitcoin address. Like RenVM will generate a Bitcoin address basically in the back end. It'll pop up for the user, they send it in, but you can basically tie that specific Bitcoin address with intent. So you can say, once RenVM gets that Bitcoin, it mints it as an ERC20, but then it sends that ERC20 into the MakerDAO contract, and then MakerDAO accepts that and then mints you DAI back to your Ethereum address. So you can do all of that with one on-chain transaction. And so we're just kind of starting to do that, and those integrations are coming to fruition. And in fact, as we speak, last night we were just accepted as collateral into MakerDAO, for example. So things like that will start to pop up. So we're super excited about it, and that kind of same concept can be mimicked throughout any blockchain. Polkadot, Binance Smart Chain. So all this functionality is starting to come to fruition, which we're really excited about. And I think the big difference between us and other kind of interoperability protocols, and let's just use like Polkadot, for example, or Cosmos, they've kind of fit under the interoperability label, if you will. So they essentially, once they are asking developers to come to their protocol and build, right? And once you've built an application on that protocol, then it's interoperable with all the other applications that are built on that protocol. So you kind of have to go to them and build, right? And that will happen eventually, right? It's certainly a good strategy, but we've kind of taken another one, which is, we are bringing interoperability to DeFi. So basically, the Ethereum applications that exist don't really have to do a whole lot. They can natively, have support for Bitcoin or Zcash just by integrating RenVM, and it's a JavaScript SDK, so it's pretty straightforward. So I think that's the big differentiator is we bring interoperability to existing applications versus asking an application to build on another interoperability protocol. And I think one more just to tie that question off, and sorry if I'm rambling, is that we support kind of these native legacy assets like Bitcoin. Like Bitcoin's very static, if you will. Like it's not going to build up an interoperability protocol that like supports Bitcoin natively, and Cosmos and Polkadot can't necessarily support it natively. So therefore, we serve as essentially an adapter that takes it in its native format and then converts it into the relevant format for the blockchain. And I think that is unique as well with regards to other interoperability protocols. So I know that was a lot, but I'll leave it at that.
No, like I think you touch on a very interesting point, which is like how you connect user and user applications through RenVM. so that users can connect with the transaction between blockchains, right? So that goes to maybe the next question would be: is it what the integration with my Ether wallet uh,
Mhm.
has accomplished? Maybe you can use that as an example to walk us through a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, my Ether wallet, great mobile wallet, and we actually really love their integration with RenVM. I mean, it's just, the user experience is fantastic. We've used it a couple times, and I think, yeah, that went live a couple weeks ago. But essentially, yeah, they built an integration with RenJS, which is our SDK, and again, that just allows, an Ethereum application such as a wallet, it can apply to MetaMask or any wallet, in fact. Um, and yeah, it allows users to send real Bitcoin in. It, waits for the confirmations and then mints a one-for-one representation as an ERC20, and that's what shows up in my Ether wallet, in an individual's wallet, and then they can go take that ERC20 and do what they want with it, trade it, lend it, whatever they like. But overall, yeah, the MyEther wallet was a great integration. We're really quite proud of it, just because the user experience is so fantastic. I mean, really, an average, I mean, we are probably not average users, but like someone off the street in the public could really go use that. It's that simple. So that's a big step forward in general user experience. So we're really excited about it.
Great. You mentioned, support of Bitcoin has been a major milestone to you guys. And what are all the tokens that you currently support on
Mhm.
RenVM at the moment?
Yep. So it's Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, Zcash, Dogecoin, Digibyte, Luna or Terra, and then last but not least is Filecoin. And that was just kind of our first cohort, and some were pretty simple because they're just forks of Bitcoin. Others are kind of newer blockchains with the kind of nuances that we wanted to test out and kind of see how RenVM responded to them. So it's very much kind of a test run, if you will, where we wanted to test all kind of the variations of blockchains and see how RenVM handled it. So this is really just the first cohort. We've got many more to come, so we're excited about it.
So for Nooks holders or uh, token holders, whatnot, would like as part of the governance model, will they have a say on which token you would like to bring into the REN ecosystem moving forward, or like you guys already got a long list of tokens to be added on? Maybe something that you can excite our community.
Yeah, of course. So right now, the team basically, kind of picks and chooses which assets are added, but that very much will be turned over to governance. We want to kind of enact governance as soon as possible, but we're a little wary of choosing a particular model because once you choose one, then you really can't turn back. So
Yeah.
we want to make sure we choose the right governance model for our protocol. But that very much will be a core decision that the community will make in the future. I mean, it's all, it's fairly, there's only so many assets that are kind of useful these days, right? So, I mean, we can assume the ones that'll be added, the top tens, of course, just
Yeah.
because that's where the liquidity is, that's where the usage is, and so on. So, I mean, you can generally assume that those will be added in the near future. But yeah, we do look forward to turning that over to the community in due time.
It feels like you're just paving me to ask you the next question, which
Oh,
is,
good.
do you think real world assets is something that you would consider to be wrapped through REN VM to other chains eventually?
Yeah,
Or
yeah. So I do, and it's tricky to see who will do that. I think honestly, a majority of them will be put on Ethereum, really, without us doing anything. I think a majority of real world assets will just be turned into ERC20s. So we won't have to do much there. They'll already be within the Ethereum ecosystem. But now let's say someone wants to take that ERC20 and then put it into Polkadot and trade it, for example, or do something with it there. Then we indeed will serve as a bridge to bridge that ERC20 into the Polkadot standard. So yeah, it's not something we'll oversee as an organization, but we'll very much facilitate those transactions between blockchains.
so you see, like the list can be much longer than we
Yes, we
anticipate.
can. Yes, we can.
So
Yeah, and one point there is kind of, I think the next iteration, maybe Q2 of 2021, we'll actually just generically support all ERC20s. So any ERC20 will just natively be supported by RenVM, and then you can port that over again to another blockchain. So that'll very much incorporate these assets. It won't have to be like such a manual process where we add one by one. It'll just be support for all ERC20s.
It's crucial for you to reach the scale and for your next goal, right? So for people like me who are interested to like learn more about like your trading volume across chains and whatnot, like how we can do that like today.
Yep. So we've got a little, let me see if I can find the right. So we've got a command center, essentially, that's just basically a visual representation of our network. So this speaks to the volume, it speaks to all the assets we support, it speaks to every time an asset's moved across the bridge, and then the sum of all the fees earned and all that good stuff. And it's mainnet.renproject.io. And that's our kind of our command center, for lack of better words. And you can see all the statistics of the network and the growth and all that good stuff there.
So it's mainnet.renproject.io, right?
Correct. Yep.
People who are interested can check it out. That is actually leads to the next question, because with such impressive trading volume, some of our community members may want to consider running a RenVM node on your platform. What are the criteria to do so?
Yeah, of course. So it's pretty straightforward. I mean, you have to be you have to be technical enough. Like you need to be able to use a computer, right? But if you can cross that hurdle, then you can pretty much do it. So first and foremost, you need 100,000 REN. That is kind of the bare minimum requirement. And then you need a computer, laptop, Mac, Windows, doesn't matter. And essentially you follow a set of instructions that we've outlined, and you set up a VPS or virtual private server on AWS or DigitalOcean or one of the variants there. And you essentially spin up a node on your computer, and then you deposit the REN through our command center, in fact, as well. And that's about it. It takes 15 minutes or so. And you'll need to like pay attention. You'll have to update it every couple of months, and pay attention to the community and be involved, because there are updates as we kind of expand the protocol and bring it into its new phases. There will be a few updates, so it's not like set it and forget it. You do have to be mildly involved in the community to be a part of it and to be active. But other than that, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, the directions really, as long as you follow them step by step, then you're good to go. So that's it.
So for anyone who is interested, check it out. Before we move on to talk about DeFi, anything else around RenVM node operation that you would like to highlight before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just important to note that, I mean, this is new technology. I mean, we're using something called sMPC, or secure multi-party computation. And, we're really kind of pioneering a few things with regards to sMPC. So it's a new process, and we're kind of taking a very prudent approach to all this. So we're moving slow. And again, we are a core protocol. So, I mean, we're not like some fast moving DeFi application that creates something new every day and has something exciting every day. We really are trying to create a piece of infrastructure for the global blockchain ecosystem. So by virtue, we kind of have to be very careful and move very slowly. So that's just something to keep in mind. I mean, we really have a long-term vision. And that is, I think, really important for the community to know. We're not going to have an update every day for you, right? It's more of like on a monthly basis, a quarterly basis, and so on. But we do absolutely think it's crucial for the ecosystems to succeed, and we're super excited to kind of be in the middle of all that. So I just leave with that note. Yep.
All right. Yeah, I think sustainability is
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you see a lot of projects like producing stuff every day, and it's just like, it's really not sustainable. I mean, you just can't produce that much content and, results of every day. There's a lot of testing, a lot of it's an iterative process, right? So we very much are in the sustainability camp versus kind of like, this announcements every day and so on. So, yeah.
Well, understandably, because I think people who are passionate about REN, right, they would be dying for updates and news and
Right.
excitement. They're emotionally invested, right, as much as like financially invested in your platform. So totally understand that. So let's move on to talk a little bit about DeFi. I think it's just a topic that I have not been able to avoid, since like April this year.
Yeah, it's been
Especially because
crazy.
plays such a crucial role to help accelerate the development. Um, so understand that you guys run a core protocol um, supporting a lot of DeFi apps, um, but it's more like a personal opinion per se. Like any ideas on what sort of DeFi dApps you think should be using RenVM that are not at the moment?
Hmm. Yeah, I think one. I mean, I don't know. There's so much in DeFi to touch on, but I think an obvious one is just decentral, dexes or decentralized exchanges, right? So, and we created one kind of back in the spring called Chaos Dex. And it was just a Uniswap fork, but basically that was integrated with RenVM, so it had that native Bitcoin experience. So no kind of like centralized entity involved. It's just you send in Bitcoin and then you trade it for DAI, for example. And this is real Bitcoin. You send it to a Bitcoin address, and then a couple of minutes later, DAI shows up in your wallet. Like so, just I think that would be a great use case for RenVM, and in general, it's good for our network because it's high velocity. That means like assets are moving across the bridge, if you will, back and forth. Quite frequently. So that's good for fees and so on. So that incentivizes the network and all that good stuff. So we're really excited to see a decentralized exchange utilize RenVM, like a Uniswap or something like that. Now there are some technical challenges with that. The annoying part about Bitcoin is it's quite slow, right? So you have to wait 6 confirmations for it to kind of be turned into an Ethereum variant. So then that's essentially about an hour, and that in that time frame, the price can change, between the assets. So there's some slippage, things you have to keep in mind. So it's a tiny bit more complicated when you're doing decentralized exchanges. But for another variant, and this is actually what I am most excited about in general, and I just think this is really where the innovation lies within DeFi specifically. It's really unique to DeFi. I don't think it exists anywhere else in the traditional world. And that is automated market makers, or AMM based exchanges, where you can peg an asset one to one, basically. And we have one with Curve Finance again, where you have a REN BTC paired with WBTC. So the price is exactly the same. So there's no slippage, basically. Or, I mean, there is, but just a small amount. And that, I think, is really where I think the innovation lies and where the most promise lies in general. For a whole host of reasons, for liquidity providers, you can basically maintain exposure to an asset but still earn yield on it, and that's pretty unique in itself. But in general, for us, it allows us to send in, Bitcoin, turn it into REN BTC, and then automatically switch it to WBTC. And then the user can go take that WBTC, for example, and go do what they wish with it, lend it, do whatever they want. So it allows for a one-for-one conversion of our asset to another variant. So if someone likes WBTC better, or a protocol only accepts WBTC, for example, then that's a fantastic tool to switch in between these variants. And we plan on kind of mimicking that strategy with all of our assets. So we plan on having a Zcash pool, for example, on Curve, and having that one-for-one swap ability as well. And then that really kind of facilitates that composability component that I mentioned earlier at the beginning of the call, where someone can send in real Bitcoin, trades for it switches to REN BTC, then trades to WBTC, and then that WBTC is automatically deposited into MakerDAO, and then they can borrow DAI as a result. And again, that can happen with all all on one transaction essentially. So that's AMMs really are what excites me personally about the DeFi space in general. I think that's really the most exciting thing for me. So I know that was a long answer, but I'll stop there.
Yeah, I love it. But I think you have pointed out that we saw major significant progress on DeFi this year, but quite a lot of issues have been exposed, right? Like one of the many. So you just mentioned like how you want to approach this to help grow this space. What are the other key roles you believe that REN protocol can play to help improve DeFi and further the adoption? Let's just use 2021. Let's not look beyond that, but like at least next year, like how do you think like DeFi can improve and then bring more volume? And what role exactly REN can play in?
Yeah, so I guess the two components to that question. So essentially, I mean, to make DeFi, DeFi is a particularly risky, endeavor. I'd see myself as, I'm comfortable with some amount of risk, but even myself, I question even interacting with the various DeFi protocols just because it is so risky. It's so new. Everyone's kind of like forking these new protocols without really understanding the implications and so on. So I think really the first and foremost thing that needs to happen for DeFi is it just needs to be generally safer. Like I said, I have a high risk appetite, but I even hesitate to use some of it. So for average users, and those who really kind of want the growth, to come to DeFi and expand the ecosystem and so on, there needs to be some mechanism to make it safer. And time is really the best mechanism to prove out safety, the Lindy effect and so on. But that's not, I don't know, you can't wait for 5 years to just see if something, goes wrong, right? So I don't know what the solution is. It's really quite tricky. I mean, auditing is, so expensive and so cumbersome. And then if you change one thing in your protocol, then you have to get it re-audited, right? So I don't know if that's the right solution. I mean, audits are absolutely necessary, but that's just one facet of many that needs to happen. I'd love to see like a nonprofit entity or something, that a credentialing body or an accreditation body that basically sets a set of standards and gives a little like, award or something, sets a set of core competencies, for example. And if a project meets this set of core competencies, then they're accredited to a particular standard, right? And then that standard means that it's as safe as it could feasibly be in a particular time frame. So I'd love to see something like that, just kind of a body that isn't incentivized, that doesn't have the incentives that particular protocols have, where it's just kind of a neutral body that just assesses the security risk for these various protocols. I think that in general would be a great boon to the industry, and it would bring consumer protection and all this good stuff. So I think that's a first step, is just making everything a tad safer.
You're
right?
saying like decentralizing finance essentially still needs a centralized body to improve it, right? Yeah.
I have to be like careful, right? But I think the set of competencies can be decided by the industry at large, right? It doesn't have to be like someone, some authoritarian group saying you must do X, Y, Z. It can be kind of a collaborative process where you set these standards, and then basically this body, whomever they are, can just kind of like award various protocols with this accreditation, right? So everything's a balance. Like there is no black and white, like centralized versus decentralized. Like if someone thinks it's black and white, then they don't have the ability to think, in a nuanced way, right? There's so much gray area in between that, and I think it's really important to understand that. I mean, first and foremost, right? With the ultimate goal making the protocol, as trustless and as it can over time. But again, it is an iterative process, and I think a lot of people need to understand that. So that speaks to, I think, one core component for DeFi and its growth at large. Now, as for RenVM, we just want to make sure that we're kind of laser focused on just achieving our one goal, but we want to do that as safe as in the safest way possible. And that's why we have chosen our rollout plan that we did, is because we can roll it out, see how it operates in the real world, test it out, change parameters in the protocol and so on, make sure it's safe. If there's an issue, we can fix it immediately. And then as we're more comfortable, we can then open it up and start to like release control, if you will, when we're comfortable with its safety. And that, that's paramount, really. I mean, nothing else matters except the safety of the protocol. That is the foundation for success. So that, I think, is really our core goal at this stage, and kind of why we've been, I think, slower than others, is the fact that it's paramount that the protocol be safe. So we're going to continue with that focal point in mind over the coming years. Yeah, it's just making sure RenVM and its relevance to the DeFi world, the stuff we have control over, that we can make it as safe as possible during that time.
Very pleased to hear that. I mean, having projects like you kind of safeguard that, essentially to protect people who are investing in the DeFi space as well. Okay, I'm gonna wrap up this AMA with the last question.
Yeah, of course.
Go back to what is the most important milestone that REN is aiming to accomplish in 2021?
Yeah,
most important.
Yep, I think that ties back to exactly what I was just saying: safety of the protocol, and making moving from a kind of more centralized state into a decentralized state. Moving piece by piece, essentially making sure our protocol is as decentralized as it can be. That's going to be our core mandate for 2021.
Great. You know what? We have just walked through all of the questions. So thanks so much, Michael, for your sharing and your update on the impressive performance of REN. And also big thanks to our community for the participation and all those great questions that you guys have raised. As much as we would like to answer all of the questions you guys submitted, before we close this off, Michael, any words that you would like to share in particular with the crypto.com community?
Yeah, thanks for having me so much. Absolutely, it was a great pleasure. So in general, thank you. And then if you do have any questions, just come to our Telegram and feel free to ask. We've got a great community. We've had a fantastic community since day one, and we're really pleased with them. And if you want to get involved and ask questions and just generally participate, we'd love to have you. So please do come and join us. The Telegram is at REN Project, but I'm sure you'll have links in the footer. So yeah, come and join us. And if you have any questions, just let us know. But otherwise, thank you guys so much for having me.
Yeah, or follow REN on Twitter, and the handle is REN Protocol. So last off, again, my job to reminder that if your question has just been answered by Michael, that means you may have won a share of the REN token prize pool, and the prize will be deposited directly to your crypto.com app account. And meanwhile, follow us and stay informed about all the upcoming events and AMAs and all the cool projects that we get to talk to on our official Twitter account, Telegram channels, YouTube channel. Subscribe our YouTube channel where all these amazing AMAs are hosted. Until then, see you guys next time.